Hey everybody, welcome back to the Withstand podcast and our second last episode in this season. And of course, we are in the book of Deuteronomy at the moment. And I pray that you're keeping well and of course, keeping your eyes on Jesus. We have the blessed assurance of his soon return. And I, for one, cannot wait. Feeling quite homesick at the moment for a place I've never been to. Don't know about you, but at any rate, I pray that today's episode is a blessing to you. Now today we are in chapter 33 in the book of Deuteronomy. This is God's word. Now this is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death. And he said, The Lord came from Sinai and dawned on them from Seir. He shone forth from Mount Paran, and he came with 10,000s of saints. From his right hand came a fiery law for them. Yes, he loves the people. All his saints are in your hand. They sit down at your feet. Everyone receives your words. Moses commanded a law for us, a heritage of the congregation of Jacob. And he was king in Jeshurun, when the leaders of the people were gathered, all the tribes of Israel together. Let Reuben live and not die, nor let his men be few. And this he said of Judah, Hear, Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him to his people. Let his hands be sufficient for him, and may you be a help against his enemies. And of Levi he said, Let your Thummim and your Urim be with your Holy One, whom you tested at Massah, and with whom you contended at the waters of Meribah, who says of his father and mother, I have not seen them, nor did he acknowledge his brothers, or know his own children, for they have observed your word, and kept your covenant. They shall teach Jacob your judgments, and Israel your law. They shall put incense before you, and a whole burnt sacrifice on your altar. Bless his substance, Lord, and accept the work of his hands. Strike the loins of those who rise against him, and of those who hate him, that they rise not again. Of Benjamin he said, The beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him, who shelters him all the day long, and he shall dwell between his shoulders. And of Joseph he said, Blessed of the Lord is his land, with the precious things of heaven, with the dew, and the deep lying beneath, with the precious fruits of the sun, with the precious produce of the months, with the best things of the ancient mountains, with the precious things of the everlasting hills, with the precious things of the earth and its fullness, and the favour of him who dwelt in the bush. Let the blessing come on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who is separate from his brothers. His glory is like a firstborn bull, and his horns like the horns of the wild ox. Together with them he shall push the peoples to the ends of the earth. They are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the thousands of Manasseh. And of Zebulun he said, Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents. They shall call the peoples to the mountain. There they shall offer sacrifices of righteousness, for they shall partake of the abundance of the seas, and of treasures hidden in the sand. And of Gad he said, Blessed is he who enlarges Gad. He dwells as a lion, and tears the arm and the crown of his head. He provided the first part for himself, because a lawgiver's portion was reserved there. He came with the heads of the people. He administered the justice of the Lord, and his judgments with Israel. And of Dan he said, Dan is a lion's whelp. He shall leap from Bashan. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with favour, and full of the blessing of the Lord, possess the west and the south. And of Asher he said, Asher is most blessed of sons. Let him be favoured by his brothers, and let him dip his foot in oil. Your sandals shall be iron and bronze. As your days, so shall your strength be. There is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides the heavens to help you, and in his excellency on the clouds. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He will thrust out the enemy from before you, and will say, Destroy. Then Israel shall dwell in safety, the fountain of Jacob alone, in a land of grain and new wine. His heavens shall also drop dew. Happy are you, O Israel, who is like you, a people saved by the Lord, the shield of your help, and the sword of your majesty. Your enemies shall submit to you, and you shall tread down their high places. This is the word of the Lord. Now, don't ask me why, and I definitely do not mean to be blasphemous here, but when I was reading through those scriptures and I envisaged a 120-year-old Moses blessing all of the different tribes, for some reason I had Dick Van Dyke in my head, and there are many reasons for that. My dad really liked Dick Van Dyke. He liked his attitude, the twinkle in the eye. He seemed like quite a gentle fellow and family man, etc. I don't know what he is like in real life, but of course he's just turned 100. So I had this vision in my head of Moses looking like Dick Van Dyke for some reason, but just thought I'd share that with you. You know, you just have certain images in your mind when certain key people in the Bible are speaking. Anyway, that's just something I thought I'd share with you. Now, at any rate, this is what Tom Constable writes about Moses' blessing / Dick Van Dyke in my head's blessing of the tribes. After receiving the announcement of his death and as one of his final official acts as Israel's leader, Moses pronounced a prophetic blessing on the tribes of Israel. In the ancient Near East, a dying father's final blessing spoken to his sons were an irrevocable legal testament accepted as decisive evidence in court disputes. In the case of the biblical patriarchs, the authority and potency of their last blessings derived from the spirit of prophecy in them, speaking in the testamentary form, the form of a will. As spiritual and theocratic father of the 12 tribes, Moses pronounced his blessings on them just before he ascended the mount to die, and thus his words constitute his testament. After a brief introduction to the blessing, Moses began by presenting and picturing God as a source of all blessing in the figure of the sun rising on his people gathered at Sinai. The sun is a source of physical blessing. Seir refers to the mountain range in Edom, over which the sun would apparently rise as seen from Sinai. Paran refers to the mountains near Kadesh that separated the Sinai wilderness from Canaan. The stylized or formulaic nature of such historical resumes allows them to depart from normal patterns of narration in which strict adherence to chronological and geographical sequence is expected. Thus, the Lord could come from Sinai and appear from Seir and Paran at the same time, or at least without reference to actual historical movement, which, of course, would necessitate the order Sinai, Paran, and Seir. The real point here in verse 2 is that the Lord manifested himself gloriously to his people from his earthly dwelling places, or at least his usual places of self-disclosure, namely mountaintops. The holy ones are probably angels. Moses described God as accompanied by his countless angelic servants when he revealed his law to Israel at Sinai. Some scholars regard verses 2 through 5 as among the most obscure in the entire Hebrew Bible. Moses reminded the Israelites again that Yahweh loved them. God's love for Israel is a prominent theme in Deuteronomy. The angels follow Yahweh and listen to his words, a good example for the Israelites to follow. In the exalted language of prophecy, Moses referred to himself as issuing the law to the Israelites. Though it is possible to argue that the king in chapter 33 is meant to be understood as the Lord, the immediate context suggests strongly that it is Moses. This is important because the next chapter, Deuteronomy 34, views Moses as a prototype of the coming prophet who was promised in chapter 18. Thus, at the close of the Pentateuch, the two central messianic visions of the book, that of a coming king and that of a prophet, are united in the figure of Moses, the prophet king. We should note that throughout the Pentateuch, Moses also carries out the duties of priest. Thus, in the figure of Moses, the Pentateuch is able to bring together the offices of prophet, priest, and king. The author is always careful to note, however, that Moses was not a priest of the house of Aaron. The Aaronic priesthood is of a different order than that pictured in the office of Moses. If we were looking for an analogy to Moses elsewhere in the Pentateuch, we need look no further than the figure of Melchizedek, the priest-king from Salem. Thus, as Melchizedek the priest-king blessed Abraham at the beginning of the patriarchal narratives, so here Moses the priest-king blessed the Israelites at the conclusion. The arrangement of the tribes in this blessing is unusual. Calland provided a chart of 6 lists of the tribes that appear in Genesis, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and Joshua, each of which contains a different order. It appears that God led Moses to base this list on a combination of the past and futurist histories of each tribe. Oh, that's great. They've got a map here just showing where each of the tribes were dwelling, guys, just on page 208 of your PDF. Reuben. Moses prayed and prophesied that the tribe of Reuben would not die out and that the Reubenites would become numerous. Reuben was a firstborn son of Jacob, but he did not enjoy greatness among the tribes because of his sin. He lost his father's birthright and blessing. Furthermore, no great civil or military leader or prophet ever came from this tribe as far as Scripture records. Judah. Judah received the position of leader among the tribes when his older brothers became ineligible. As in the 2 earlier tribal blessings in Genesis 27 and 49, Judah again comes out on top. Clearly, God had a special destiny for this tribe, namely the eventual production of Israel's kings, including Messiah. The tribe of Judah also led the other tribes, even in battle. Moses' prayer and blessing for Judah seems to be that Yahweh would hear the men of Judah's cry for help in battle, that they would return home safely after battles, and that God would bless them with the help of his presence in battles. Levi. Levi received a blessing for being faithful to God at Massah and Meribah, when the people complained because of lack of water. But these narratives contain no reference to Levi, so that the precise meaning of the historical reference is not clear, unless it be that in Moses and Aaron, leaders of the tribe of Levi, the whole tribe was on trial. The specific act of faithfulness to Yahweh that resulted in Levi's being chosen as the priestly tribe occurred after the events at Massah and Meribah. That later event was Levi's standing with Moses and Aaron when the rest of the nation rebelled and worshipped the golden calf at Sinai. The godly man is probably Levi rather than Aaron. The Levites' special privileges and responsibilities included teaching the rest of the Israelites God's law. The Levitical priests also burned incense before God, sacrificed offerings, and discerned God's will, using the Thummim and Urim. Smash the hips probably refers to making one incapable of producing progeny or potential offspring, as well as destroying one's strength. Benjamin. Benjamin was to enjoy God's protection continually, since God would carry this tribe on his back between his shoulders. As a warrior tribe, Benjamin would enjoy God's protection. The wish prophecy that Benjamin would live in security beside him was fulfilled when Jerusalem became the site of the temple. Jerusalem lay on the border between Judah and Benjamin. Joseph. Joseph represented Ephraim and Manasseh. Both tribes settled in what proved to be some of the most fertile land in Canaan. The firstborn of his ox probably refers to Joseph as the most powerful of the powerful. Joseph was a firstborn son of Jacob by Rachel. Ephraim was the stronger of Joseph's sons, who were both as strong as the horns of the wild ox during the tribe's conflicts with Israel's enemies. Zebulun and Issachar. These 2 tribes that lived close together would become special channels of blessing to the other nations by means of their commercial wealth. While this cannot be documented as having taken place in biblical times, the promises found startling fulfillment in the modern state of Israel, whose major port is Haifa, located in the area of ancient Zebulun. These 2 tribes would experience God's blessing as they brought riches into Israel. Their inherited territory included the fertile Jezreel Valley. In your going out and in your tents is a merizim, meaning in all that you do. Gad. Gad inherited much area east of the Jordan River that was suitable for agricultural development. Gad was a warring tribe as a lion that was very aggressive in conquering and subduing the land. Dan. Dan settled in area inhabited by lions, and some of its people migrated to northern Israel to an area that abounded in lions. The people of this tribe were also similar to lions, like the Gadites, in their aggressiveness and strength. Naphtali. Naphtali would enjoy the benefits of a sea coast, the Sea of Chinnereth or Galilee, and a comfortable position in relation to that body of water. The towns along the northern and western shores of this sea, including Capernaum and Bethsaida, lay within the territory of Naphtali. But by far the most abundant blessing was the fact that the Messiah spent most of his life and exercised much of his ministry there or in nearby Zebulun. One can scarcely imagine greater evidence of divine favour. Asher. Asher would benefit from the respect of his fellow Israelites, or favoured by his brothers, and prosperity. Oil is probably a metaphor for prosperity here as elsewhere, though Asher's land was rich in olive trees. Asher's territory on the Mediterranean coast would require fortifications, but God would protect him. It is interesting that years ago a pipeline of oil came into the northern part of the kingdom through the land of Asher. Moses did not mention the Simeonites in this blessing. Jacob had prophesied that God would scatter the Simeonites in Israel. Simeon received no tribal allotment of land, but only a few cities in Judah, when Joshua divided the promised land. The Simeonites became absorbed into the other tribes, especially Judah. The conclusion of the blessing. The blessing closes by returning to consider Israel's God again. Moses pictured him as a God who is great enough to give the tribes everything that he had just predicted about them. The key to Israel's blessing was her God and her relationship to him. Ugaritic literature employed similar imagery, rides through the heavens, to describe the god Baal. This Hebrew description was probably a polemic against pagan religion. The Lord is the only one who rides in the heavens. That sense would have been obvious to the audience of this time. Israel's greatest danger wasn't the armies around them so much as the appetites within them. As we might expect here at the end of the book, Moses pictures Israel's dwelling in the land as a reversal of the events of the early chapters of Genesis, when Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden. The Lord has fulfilled these predictions in part, but he will fulfill them completely in the future. This will occur when Israel repents and God brings her back into her land, that is, during the millennium. And as always, guys, I'll leave a link to these wonderful notes for you in the show notes. Now, it's pretty obvious that to receive a blessing from God through Moses was an astounding privilege. So today's daily devotion from Dr. Charles Stanley is titled An Astounding Privilege. It's based on Psalm 103, verse 19. The Lord has established his throne in the heavens, and his sovereignty rules over all. And Dr. Stanley writes, have you considered what an astounding gift it is to be able to know the living God, to be able to approach him at any time with whatever issue presses on your heart? No matter what you encounter today, he already knows all about it and has the best plan for leading you successfully through it. He knows you better than you know yourself, your past, present, and future, the thoughts you think, the motives of your heart, the places where you need to heal, and the ways you must grow. With his sovereign, omnipotent hand, he can handle any obstacle or difficulty you face. With his unfathomable knowledge, he guides you with perfect wisdom. And because of his unfailing, unconditional love, he makes sure everything that touches your life will ultimately be used for your good. Is your heart set on knowing him? I hope it is, because there's absolutely nothing better or more encouraging than walking with him and experiencing his awesome presence. And he prays, God, truly you are sovereign and greatly to be praised. Teach me who you are and show me how to appreciate you more every day. Amen. Well, guys, that brings us to the end of yet another episode dedicated to the wonderful book of Deuteronomy. And of course, it's our second last episode in this season, which means we'll have our final one next time and a very short break in between seasons after that. But until next time, I pray for each and every one of you. God bless you. Take care. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Maranatha.